Okay, today our viewer has asked, is there a concern with blood pressure getting too low on a whole food plant-based diet?
Oh my, this really should not happen. I mean, blood pressure is essential, and when it just comes down to the basic physiology of keeping the lights on in your brain, when that heart pumps, it has to pump at least 80 millimeters of mercury of pressure to push blood up into your brain. If it gets much below that, 70, 60 millimeters of pressure, there may well not be enough pressure to perfuse the brain and people pass out. And that's really what fainting is. It's nature's way of getting your head down to the level of your heart so blood has an easier route up into your brain and people wake up shortly after they faint because the blood flow of the brain is restored. So low blood pressure is serious business. And occasionally I'll have people on plant-based diets complain of it, or at least have symptoms that are suggestive of it. So think what's going on. They're usually lean like people with wide open arteries and healthy hearts and blood vessels. It's really a sign of health to have a low blood pressure. It means your heart is strong, your arteries are wide open. But especially if I've got a very lean vegan woman who weighs 92 pounds, she's 5'4", really lean. Folks like that notoriously run low blood pressures. And if they suddenly stand up, gravity can pull blood out of their head, and for a few minutes, oh, I don't feel so good. And they want to sit down or lay down, which is a smart thing to do. So they're pushing that edge of that envelope into too low a blood pressure. That really shouldn't happen. And the most likely cause is they're dehydrated. They're just not drinking enough water. And before we get into all sorts of exotic things to look for, the best thing emperors should do is have an honest look at their water drinking and bump it up by another 16-ounce glass or more. Here's my hibiscus tea, but a couple of these during the day extra is often all that's really needed. The person, if they're in this chronically low blood pressure state, and again, that the low blood pressure, it's easy on the heart, easy on the blood vessels. These folks have a very low risk of ever developing a heart attack or a stroke. I mean, it's a good thing to run the system at a lowish pressure. It's not a bad thing at all. You just don't want to pass out. As I said, this can happen both when you stand up quickly, but also when we sit for prolonged periods of time, the blood will pool down in our legs. Remember, we were designed to be active all day, foraging for food and climbing trees and running away from leopards. We were never meant to sit in front of a computer hour after hour or sit in an airplane hour after hour. And that lets blood pool down in the legs. And if the blood pressure is low to begin with, and you drop another pint or two down your leg veins, people can pass out sitting in a chair, these low blood pressure folks. So these are folks, if this happens frequently and they're otherwise healthy, they don't have a congenital heart problem or anything like that, there's someone who could bump up the amount of sodium in their diet. They could have a glass or two of celery juice. That's got about 200 milligrams of sodium in every cupful. They're the few folks who could probably put a little extra tamari sauce on their rice or Bragg's liquid aminos, some of these sodium-containing condiments, some of the sauerkrauts. People are all into fermented foods these days. Well, there are many sauerkrauts that are made with a substantial dollop of salt in it. And a few forkfuls of that might give you just that extra 300, 500 milligrams of sodium that makes you retain enough fluid to get the pressure in the pipes up. So if you're frequently getting these lightheaded episodes, check with your doctor, make sure that it's not a sign of anything serious. But if they say, no, you're fine, but you're just a lean person with low blood pressure who needs a little extra blood volume, increase your water intake. And if that alone doesn't help, then bump up your sodium intake as naturally as possible. Don't be taking salt tablets. Don't be eating ham sandwiches and cheese. Go with the whole plant-based foods to the greatest extent possible to bump up your sodium intake. And that usually takes care of the problem. You also want to take that walk every day, keep those muscles moving, keep that blood circulating, keep that heart nice and strong, and you'll have enough blood to keep the lights on upstairs there. And not be one of those folks who feels lightheaded every time they stand up. That's not pleasant. Now you know what to do about it. Hi everyone, Dr. Michael Klaper here, announcing our new format for our Q&A with Dr. K. Annie Hagen will be asking me one question that's been sent in by our viewers. So if you want to see if your question is getting answered, do join us for our Q&A with Dr. K right here. Hope to see you then.